Hey y'all, who's ready for spring besides me? Hands up in the comment section. Today we're using some dollar store blanks to make some pretty spring decor. So I'm starting out with this giant egg, which I thought was really cool, and I thought this would be so pretty with some castings on it. So let's get to it. So the first thing I do is take this Gorilla Super Glue and I'm just going to get the two pieces together. I'm going to let this sit for probably 15 minutes before I go ahead and start the next process. Now at first I thought I was going to use some clay, but I wanted to use the Redesign with Prima Moulds. They have some really beautiful florals, and I know from the past the molds to me are just a little shallow, so I decided to forego the clay and I'm going to use casting resin instead. Now this is obviously personal preference. I just find that the casting resin would be a lot easier for me and quicker for me. So that's why I'm going this route, because I am going to be making quite a few castings for this video. Okay, so I'm using the Amazing Casting Resin and it's equal parts A and B. You want to work very quickly when you are using this resin because it is a quick setup resin. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my A, and then I'm going to add my B, and then you give it a really good stir. And you'll know your resin is ready when it turns a little clear. Now you don't want to over stir it because it will harden quicker. And you want to go ahead and have extra molds on hand just in case you've mixed too much. Now I'm a little messy, obviously you can see from this video. This is only like the third time I'm using this resin. And with anything, it just takes a little practice. So I'm taking my popsicle stick and I'm moving the resin to all of the little crevices, and I have all of these different molds that I'm just kind of working the resin in. And I noticed my table is obviously a little wonky, so I'm going to have to fix that. But I do over pour some of the casting areas, which is okay because once it's dry, it really is very easy to go in and just kind of shave it down or cut off the extra pieces, and it all works out okay. So once I get all my molds casted that I want to use, I go in and you can see that when you first take them out, if you don't wait like a full 10 minutes, but you can tell they're set up because they are pretty white, they are very pliable. So they're going to be warm to the touch, and I pulled them out and just put a little thin layer of glue on, and I start layering them onto this egg the way that I just the way that it looks pleasing to the eye. So now I'm just going to continue to get my castings down, and I do this like in several steps. I get it down, and because of the curved surface, I was kind of nervous about going ahead and layering all of the pieces, so I take some masking tape or some painter's tape and I tape those down and I let them sit for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I come back in and I go to the next step. And I'm going to I just lay them out and kind of decide where I want them, you know, what looks pretty. So once I get an idea of where I want to put a certain piece, I don't show this yet, I do show it later in the video, but I'm going to take a blow dryer, and the casting mold is going to be super hard. But if you take a blow dryer and you just let that sit on that mold, just keep it there for a couple of minutes and your mold becomes pliable again. So it does kind of start to get softer, and that way you can go ahead and get your glue on there real quick and kind of get that pressed down over top of each of the mold pieces. So once I'm pleased with the way that it's laid out, I go ahead and tape it down and let that sit for about a half an hour. And then I come back and I remove the tape. Okay, so now we're ready to paint. And I'm going to take just a few different colors of acrylic paint. I'm not worried actually about the sheen because we'll cover it in wax later. So you're not going to be able to tell what the sheen is anyway. So I'm going in with a few colors of green, and I do the leaves and any of the stems, and I go in with a blow dryer because hello, we're a little impatient. We want to get this project done. So once I get that dry, I go in with our second coat and I dry that as well. I just move from piece to piece and choose a color for that particular flower. And I repeat this process until I get all of the flowers completed. This is definitely a labor of love, you know, with creating so many castings from molds and, you know, just getting them put down in different spots and having to wait for them to dry. It's definitely, you know, not immediately rewarding, but at the end, I think they turn out great. Okay, so now I'm going to take my Waverly chalk paint and plaster, and I'm going to take some salt wash, which is a textured paint additive, and you're just going to mix that in until you get the consistency that you want. And here I wanted a consistency that was more like concrete. So I made it super thick, and the first thing I do is I go around all of the edges, you know, with a small brush, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to take a big glob and I'm just going to start stippling that and then smacking it onto my egg. And I'm going to continue around the entire egg, and I want it on there pretty thick because I want it to look like a stone. So I just continue slapping that on there, creating those little peaks. And it does end up, after it's dried, it really does look like a concrete stone. It's almost like this egg belongs in your garden. I could see this in my mom's garden. It would be so pretty. Once that's dry, I do go in with some Jolie's white wax, and I'm just going to heavily, and I mean heavily, white wax this piece. Now, before anybody comes at me in the comment section, I do realize that this was like way too much wax, and I don't show it in the end, but after the pictures, when I realized that, you know, this paint or this, the pieces are not like soaking in wax like, yeah, you know, like a wood piece would do, I do go back in and I wipe it back some more. But it does turn out really pretty, and I just placed the egg inside of one of those little Dollar Tree signs so it would sit up. Now I'm going to take this dollar store planter and we're going to give her a little facelift. So I'm going to take the rest of the castings that I made, and I'm just going to start laying them out on top of the front of this, on top of the letters, so you don't see those anymore. And just like I did with the egg, I'm going to just kind of eyeball it and see where I like them. And once I figure that out, I'm going to actually commit and use some Titebond Quick and Thick and also some hot glue and get those glued down. Now, I know that the top piece I want is to have my bunny on top, so I don't actually commit him until the very end after I get all of the pieces down. Now, this is what I was talking about with the blow dryer. You can take a really hard casting from the resin, and you can heat it up, and now you can see once I get that heated up it becomes very pliable. So now I can layer it on top of another piece and be able to get it pressed down against my surface, which is, you know, obviously a little bit more secure than with it just kind of hanging or hovering on top of another piece. And just like with the egg, I'm laying them out until it's really pleasing to my eye. I do tape them down for like 15 minutes or so before I continue moving on to the next piece. Once they're dry and I get everything down that I want, I'm going to go in with some Waverly chalk paint and the color Celery, and this is a really pretty springy green. Of course, I take my blow dryer in between coats and get that dry just so I can move on. Once I get the second coat on, and I don't know what happened to my footage, I definitely painted the inside, but once I get both coats dry, then I'm going to go in with some Waverly chalk paint and the color white, and I'm going to dry brush all of the details on each of my castings. And dry brushing is basically where you're going to load your paintbrush with some paint, and then you're going to literally offload most of that paint until it's almost dry, and then you're just going to go in and hit all of the details on the outsides of the edges. Anything that's raised is where you want to take that paintbrush and hit on those castings. I just continue this process until I'm happy with the way that this looks. There's no right or wrong here, it's just what you're happy with. You can go heavy-handed, light-handed, whatever looks good to you. So now this could be a double-sided planter since we only put the bunny and floral molds on the front. So now I'm going to try and dry brush the letters on the back of this. And at first I thought, oh, they're not sticking out very well, so let me go a little heavier handed. And then once I start to do that, I'm like, no, don't really like that so much. And then I just get a little crazy and I'm like, okay, now you're totally ruining this. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. So then I'm like, okay, I need to fix this because this is a hot mess. So now I'm going to go in with my spritzer bottle and I'm like, okay, well, maybe, oh, yep, a little whitewashing. That's not so bad. So I spritz it a little more and then I, trying to brush out that paint, and then I go in with a paper towel and I wipe it back. After a little bit of back and forth with this, it does turn out fine, but maybe not do what I did. So then after I get it, to something that I'm happy with, then I'm going to go in with a wet wipe and I'm just going to go over top of the lettering and wipe it back to where it was black. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Was this a little too much mold work? Was it, right up your alley? I would love to hear your feedback. Thank you guys. See you next time.